So welcome to the 5 ways to grow your business. But Gary Gold is actually just listed the Playboy Mansion for $200 million. He's in the audience. I'm going to hopefully be able to bring him on. He probably doesn't even want to come on now after all the fumbles. But Gary, grab your headset, plug it into your computer. That's going to be your best bet to make sure this works. And I put a link in the chat to your article, Jimmy, because I think it's important. My takeaway of the 5 you just went through, which is making your product better, supporting the people that buy it better, marketing it better, selling it better, and then supporting the team that helps you better, right? You take all of that together. And my takeaway out of the gates when you came up with the framework is that most people are actually only focused on the marketing and the sales bucket of growth. They think they have to make more calls, do more prospecting, buy more leads, do more marketing if they're going to experience 2x, 3x, 4x growth like we learned about in the Blitz scaling course on YouTube. And so what I think people really should focus on, I'm going to give a ton of marketing ideas and a ton of sales ideas that'll help you do those things better right away. But where your competition's not focused and where most companies fail to grow are in the buckets that Jimmy's going to focus more on, which is getting the product right, servicing and helping the people that buy it, and then creating an environment for the team so they can crush it. So each of the 5 is great. We're going to crush it. The echo's gone. It looks like things are good. Jimmy, let's get into the first one, which is thinking about what you sell. So the first thing is, and on this Blitz scaling course, which is on YouTube, Greylock Partners, the guy that started LinkedIn and PayPal is the head venture capitalist there. His name is Reid Hoffman. And they did a course at Stanford. I don't know if you covered that, but that's sort of where we got inspired to how do you actually blueprint and come up with tactics to massively grow. And, you know, for every guest lecturer they brought on, Eric Schmidt from Google, Marissa Mayer from Yahoo, the guy that started Nextdoor, the guy that started Airbnb, the guy that started the Mozilla browser.
And Netflix,
It's a great show. But each time they brought that in, okay, each time they brought somebody in, every time they talked about scale and growth, they talked about obsessing about the product, because the reality is that this curve is connected and that the marketing and selling and supporting and the work environment around your company all gets dramatically better, and it all is directly impacted by getting the product right. So talk about that.
Sure. So in software, they have this idea called magic moments, right? So the concept is quite simple. People download thousands of apps a year on their phone, and any software company is looking to really get connected with users in such a way where they become habitual users of it, right? They love the product, right? It's not enough to get someone to basically download it. You have to get them to actually use it on a daily basis. That's what they consider to be valuable for them. So this idea of magic moment is, what is the part of your product or service that people actually value? And once that moment happens, right, they remember why they use you, why they paid for you, right? So, and of course, I'm gonna have you kind of give the example here with Facebook, because they use that as sort of the most common example for what a magic moment would look like.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the way you want to look at it, is look at the process that you've already got in place, and can you identify where those magic moments happen? Okay. And then if you really have never thought of it that way, like the example that I'll give for the real estate agents watching, if you're a real estate agent, clap it up. If you're watching the show, we got thousands of people that will watch this that aren't real estate agents. But with the real estate community, their product is their service. Their product is their experience that they bring to the consumer. Their product is their negotiation skills. Their product is sort of a little harder to find than a software company's product, which is sometimes a username and password. So one great example would be, I was interviewing this agent out in San Francisco, highly competitive, multi-million-dollar market. And she came up with a way to insert a magic moment into every listing presentation she gives. So every time she did a sales pitch, she purposefully planted a seed, literally, because I'll tell you how the strategy works. But she basically in San Francisco, when you're going after a multi-million-dollar condo, you're up against a couple people, and they're not just going to sign at the end of the thing. Okay, these are sharp folks that work in Silicon Valley. It's like the CMO of Twitter or something that she's trying to get a deal for. And so what she did is she has this really beautiful plant. I think it was an orchid, not a rare orchid by any means, but a beautiful, stunning orchid. She said the whole setup cost her maybe $40 with the vase and everything. And I don't know what it cost her, but it's an inexpensive magic moment. And what she does is every morning after a listing presentation, so she's there Tuesday at 2, she goes in, she crushes it, she does her normal thing. Her magic moment is the next morning. She goes by and she lets them know that she forgot the plant in her car when she came yesterday and she wanted to drop it off. And it's a magic moment in the sense that it's a nice gesture, but it's also the timing of these magic moments, Jimmy, is very critical. I think for a seller, getting a legitimate offer is a magic moment. So how do you announce that now? If it's being announced in a boring way, make that moment more magical. So step one, identify the magic moments. When somebody gets the keys, that's a magical moment. Make it more magical. But then the flip side of that would be you maybe haven't ever thought about shock and awe. Where can you purposefully make people smile in the process? So that's a big one, is identifying magic moments. I love that. The guy that taught about that in the Stanford course was a guy named Alex, who is the head of growth for Facebook. And for them, they defined it as, at the point that somebody gets 10 friends, that is our magic moment, because then they get hooked. Then they're all in. Anyway, good stuff.
Well, you gave great advice there, Chris, which is this idea of first, before you start delivering orchids, right? Take a moment to basically identify what are the existing magic moments within the business that you can improve upon, that you can double down on. So I'm going to keep giving you parallels within software, because I think it's very related. What are the features that people love about software? Make those better versus adding new features. The same is true with your service. What are the services that you already provide that people absolutely love? And how can you be not 10% better than your competition, 10x better than your competition? So so that's step one, like Chris was just outlining. Step two is, if you're trying to uncover opportunities for new magic moments, here's a quick piece of advice we want to give you. First, identify the parts of the transaction that are highly important to the consumer. That if you ask them on a scale 1 to 10, right, 10 being incredibly important, 1 being basically not important, these are all 10s. And then simultaneously, the ones that have a low satisfaction ratio on average. So things that you feel are underserved is basically what you're trying to look at uncovering here. So in the service space, oftentimes, Chris, that boils down to communication through the process. You gave a couple examples. When you hand someone the keys, what about when they move in, right? And you just moved in a house like last year. Like, what happens next? How can you make and extend that process? Really highly important. They just moved in. What the hell am I doing here? Where, you see examples of this.
Well, it made me think of something that happened recently. A couple of years back, Nashville Brian got some publicity where he basically bought sort of this super cool hybrid Mercedes, but he had Wi-Fi installed. He had iPads in the back seat. He had he basically, I forget what they called it. Somebody could probably help me out in the chat, but it was basically, an open house on wheels, and think of the kind of the Uber, right? Like when you get in an Uber, I read a great article about like how to get 5-star reviews as an Uber driver, right? And it's the same concept. It's the mints, the plugs, the water. Those are the things. Those aren't the little things. Those are the things to creating that great experience. So that's what I think. Yeah. Go ahead. You
bring up a great example here, Chris, because in an Uber, you're going from point A to point B. And even the crappy Uber drivers will get you from point A to point B. The same thing is true with a real estate transaction. Even a bad agent will probably get the person from point A to point B. It's throughout that experience, the waters, the mints, the newspapers, the right heat, good music, right? Those are the things we have to be thinking about in the service space. So here's the bigger concept. And we'll keep getting to the tactics here.
Here's James is saying he converted his car to a mobile office. I mean, I've seen agents that have mobile scanners,
Wi-Fi enable it, right?
Yeah, like we don't have to go to Kinko's. We don't have to go back to the office. That's a great example, James. Thank you. I was just curious, and a quick pro tip on Blab. Great audience. 300 people watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. By the way, there's a tweet and a share button on the left. Please hit that now. Add the hashtag water cooler that you guys are watching the show. We won't let you regret it throughout the remainder. But I guess what I'm curious about, Jimmy, I totally lost my train of thought. Cheers. Keep it moving. No. I wanted to give a pro tip. Blab pro tip. Sorry.
Okay, you want to give your Blab pro tip? I don't know if you're qualified to give Blab pro tips at this point, but go ahead.
Well, there's a couple tips I read about for the show for the audience. I know a lot of people are first timers. Like most of the people are first.
Like us.
And by the way, Greer, John, Anthony, Curtis, Gary, Blake, they all just tweeted it right then. Jimmy, see that on the side. So thank you guys so much. But really quick, there's a quick tip. Yeah. If you put in forward slash, okay. So if you just put slash, it will bring up a list of commands. And then if it's like something where you want to do an emoji, you wanted to put in an image, you wanted to do a GIF, you wanted to ask a question. If you do /Q and then you ask the question in Blab, it's going to put it on the left for us. So it queues it up. That we know it's a question, not something you're just interacting with, sort of like Slack, which is what Blake's saying, the slash command. So very cool. So Jimmy, really quick, we got a question.
Yeah.
Why are you growing a beard? Is this a New England Patriots thing?
No, well, I'm unfortunately I'm not like that fanatical. Even though I love the Patriots and they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, it's because it's like 10 degrees in Boston. And I walk a mile a day to the office, and like
it's a functional beard.
It's a very functional beard. It does the job. I'm seeing the questions now because I've expanded it. Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, the beard looks great, dude. I would keep rocking it. People love it.
Well,
so what other topics on the product itself, Jimmy?
Well, I want to just sort of round this idea off, Chris, which is this is the foundational piece of a growing business, is that if you don't have a great product or service, everything else you do from a marketing, from a sales perspective, from a support perspective, is void, right? It doesn't make a difference. It's moot. So nailing the product and having a critical eye, which I think is important, and realizing that you are not as great as you think you are, and it's hard to admit that, right? And then coming back and identifying where you can improve is the mark of a great entrepreneur. So these are the questions we want you asking yourself. These are the things we want you focusing on to make sure 2016, it's not that you market better and sell better, you get better at what you do, and consumers will notice that. So let's build on this, Chris, okay? You've got a great product, you've got great service, you're having these magic moments that people are talking about, the word is spreading, but now you've got the challenge. When you're growing a business, you have to support customers. Now, you wrote a book on part of this was about the importance of support. What was the quote you had in PeopleWare, Chris, about support?
Well, it's service is marketing, and that is really what we're talking about here for sure. Yes.
Well, this idea of, okay, you've got a great product, now you got to support the product. Here's one thing I think is important to realize, because I think about support every day. I'm in the trenches every day. We get hundreds of support tickets from our customers, and we're constantly trying to figure out ways to basically improve the efficiency there. For every one customer that complains, this is a study done by Lead Resources International. For every one customer that complains, there are 26 people who don't say anything. I'm going to repeat that. For every one person who complains, there are 26 people who don't say anything and feel the same way. So as an example, Chris, why this is so eye-opening for us in support is because we tend to be very reactive in support, right? Just handling emails, handling phone calls as they come in. If someone complains, we try to solve that problem. To transcend that and to become excellent at support and unlock the growth and basically happy customers and word of mouth, you have to be proactive, right? You have to anticipate what your client's needs. Now, there is one thing that you need to understand about support that will change the way you think about it. Happy customers, how you achieve happy customers, is all about meeting their expectations, right? That is it. Now, here's the aha for me, Chris. Mm-hmm. As an organization, as a business, you have the ability to set the expectations, okay? So in our industry, Chris, and you and I have talked about this many times before, we deal with agents who are 24/7 on the clock, and they're burning themselves out. They're picking up the phone at 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday when they're watching Downton Abbey because their client's emailing them, right? And as a result, your business suffers because you're just wearing yourself too thin. Smart agents like Jack Cotton, who we had in the show a while back, Lee Brown, who we had in the show a while back, right? they set the expectations up front with their clients in terms of how the process is going to work, what they should expect, and how they're going to basically manage the transaction, buy side or sell side. And once you realize that you are in control of that, then all of a sudden you actually can create a predictable experience for every single client. Clients don't need calls back, Chris, within 5 minutes. If they know that during these hours you return calls, and if they send you an email after hours, you're going to call back the next day. They're not going to be upset about that. But if they're used to you responding at 10 o'clock at night and the next day you respond at, like, say, 3 hours later, they're going to get pissed. So here's a couple things that we want you to be thinking about. First and foremost, you want to establish those boundaries. You want to establish those expectations on the support side. So think about it, and this is a hard thing to do, guys. Think about it from the perspective, if you are a brand new customer, what are the questions you're going to be asking yourself, right, throughout that process? And try to anticipate their needs, okay? Throughout the day, you're going to have sort of this chaos where you're going to have people kind of calling you, emailing you on the fly. It's very hard to manage your day and be productive when you are reacting to all these things. Mm-hmm. So what we do at Curaytor, which is, and personally has helped me, and we always are trying to improve upon this, is you want to have these quiet periods, Chris, where you eliminate all of your distractions, okay? And you focus solely on just simply, responding to people. That could be 15 minutes every hour. It can be 30 minutes every few hours, however your day shakes out. Why this is so important is because many of you who are watching right now on Blab, right, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this, you see a question in your inbox, right, at 9 a.m. You read it, you internalize it, but you don't reply because something on Facebook pops up or your phone buzzes or you get a text message from your team or someone calls you, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And then like 11 a.m., you're checking your emails between appointments. You see that same email, right? You're internalizing it again. You're not doing anything about it. And you haven't replied yet. And then 3 hours later, right, you're at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and finally you begin to type an email, but it's in your draft mode because you got interrupted again. That one email that could have taken all of 60 seconds to respond to, you didn't complete because you created an environment in which you didn't facilitate the ability to respond, right? Mm-hmm. So as a support person, dealing with hundreds of tickets and dealing with hundreds of customers across all different time zones and dealing with a team of 15 people across several continents, you have to have those times in your day that you schedule mm-hmm. to really focus on clearing out these support tickets, okay? So that's number one. I'm going to keep it rolling here, Chris, and by all means.
By the way, I just want to ask you from a functionality perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you have the link up to the show page, Jimmy, close that out. I don't know if you do. Seems like it's echoing again. It wasn't before, but
okay. I don't.
So when it comes to support, I think one of the challenges that I faced when I worked your job for a couple of weeks there and sort of mm-hmm. became the lead on support was that a lot of times, especially as a real estate agent, your support may be the lender doing something. You're getting your job done in support often requires other people getting their jobs done. And then I could ask almost anybody in the world, like, how many page views do you have on your website? How many likes do you have on your business page? How many followers do you have on Twitter? And they could rattle that off or grab it in 1 second. Mm-hmm. But what a lot of businesses can't do is tell you what is the average time it takes you to respond to a problem. Mm-hmm. And I think that you're looking at new technology for our company that I think is at least worth mentioning at this point, because when you are, especially think about a listing agent that's watching, Jimmy, that has 41 listings.
Yeah.
And let's say on average, like, I would love to know in the chat for you guys right now, how many problems per listing on average will there be, right? So you're carrying 40 listings. Stonebridge team says 4 problems on average. There's right there is 160 problems, Jimmy, that are coming your way. So, I personally like really simple stuff for to-dos, but in support, your to-dos transcend you. Your to-dos are sometimes to be done by others. So talk a little bit about the technology that we're investing in. I think it's worth people looking at, or at least looking at that space of, and I'd love to also know, for those of you that are buying software, buying leads, going online, when have you actually cut a check or invested in a software or solution that was service focused, not sales or marketing focused? That sure. I think is a key to massive growth. Yep.
Yeah. So for the software, and we'll get to the software in just a moment here, but what I want to get to your question here, because what you're really asking in that question is, when you have a problem that you can't solve yourself, that requires you to basically rely on someone else to do the job, right? How do you manage that? And now I wrote about this on the Curator site it's under, I believe, one of the customer expectation ones. And I have this script that we use called the no update email. Mm-hmm. And what's really great about the no update email is it allows you to communicate to the client while the problem is still occurring, to appease them, to prevent them from getting upset that it's taking too long to basically solve that problem. So the no update email basically goes like this. Hey, Chris, I want to just check in with you. We're still waiting on X. I'm going to follow up later today. I'll keep you posted with my results. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, Jimmy. What you just said in that email was, I have no update for you, Chris. There's no new information, but I'm going to follow up, and I'm going to follow back up with you in a few hours, let you know how it goes. Yeah. So on the support side, you have those two different types of problems, Chris, right? Problems that you have to solve, and then problems that you rely on other people to solve. So you have to have a way to cross that barrier with some clear and concise communication. Do you have a follow-up to that?
Well, exactly what I was going to say is there's things like Yesware, and there's things like Boomerang. These are sort of plugins for Gmail where your no update email should be a template. And because you're going to use that one a lot. And I think that, for me, with my experience of buying a home, that would have probably been a magical moment that my realtor could have added, would have just simply been that understanding that no update sometimes is the most important update of all. And then the other thing would be, like, I know that, again, like, a lot of people don't run a big, huge company like you, Jimmy, and have over 400 customers and have 8 people on their ops team and on their dev and have this company like Curators. We're starting to grow. A lot of people are just solopreneurs, or they're just a real estate agent without a team. So another app that I can't recommend enough for following through on the promises you make around support is called Boomerang, because Boomerang for Gmail is quite simple. If I send something very urgent and important, send it back to me. If they don't respond, they don't open it, and they don't click it, because part of it is getting the message out there. Part of it is knowing the message was read. So I want to basically, in your situation, when I say I'll get back to you in 48 hours, as I send that by checking a box on Boomerang, I'll get that email back in 48 hours, which just makes not forgetting that simple. So whether it's Boomerang for the reminders, Yesware for the templates, Groove HQ for the hub, and sort of that place where you can forward tickets and start tracking times meticulously. I think there needs to be a support software revolution starting in real estate, because a lot of the biggest problems in real estate are around communication.
Well, what you're talking about, and we're gonna dive into marketing here. We got Gary coming on in just a few minutes here, but what you're talking about is one of the unintended consequences of growing your business by being great at what you do, marketing it really well, selling it really well, is you get a lot of customers, right? And oftentimes you're not prepared for that rush. We certainly weren't. So there are pro tips that I'm going to share with you. Just a few more I'll rapid fire through, and then we'll talk about the software, and then we'll go into marketing. But to Chris's point, Yesware, Boomerang, these are great apps for solopreneurs. We used them early on, and they work really well for us. The second tip I'm going to give you real quickly, and we'll rapid fire through this, is don't be half pregnant. And what we mean by that is, when you slow down to reply to an email during these sort of quiet times, oftentimes, Chris, people look just to reply as quickly as they possibly can. And you could save yourself a tremendous amount of energy and effort in future, basically, problems by not only responding to the question, but asking yourself, what is the next logical question they're going to ask, and then answering that in advance, right? So making a concerted effort to really be thorough with your emails makes a huge, huge difference, okay? So again, slowing down to do this, you can only do that when you actually can control the environment in which you're working in. And the last tip before I recommend the software program that we're starting to use here, Curator, is words matter. Now, I was inspired by Chris. He did a great presentation at Excellence on the conversion code and scripting and words. And we've applied that actually same strategy. And we started to think like sales on the support side by focusing on how we communicated with our clients. And there's one word that I have committed to not saying in 2016 is sorry. Okay. And this is really important on the support side. You want to stop saying sorry, because once you start saying sorry when you screw up, which by the way, we do, and we have to sort of rectify. Once you start saying sorry, you put yourself in a defensive position where you're at the mercy of the client, right? So rather than saying sorry in the sense of like, oh, sorry I screwed up, or sorry I didn't get back to you, or sorry I didn't complete this, or sorry that we're delayed here, or sorry the house didn't sell, or sorry we didn't get any showings this past week, right? You can rephrase it in the context of, I understand at this point in the process, you expected to sell your house. And if I was in your position, I would also be frustrated. Here's what we're going to do to basically get you back on track. And what you end up doing is you take control of the conversation. You take control of the process again. Once you start injecting sort of those apology words, Chris, you lose total control. The consumer stops trusting you. And ultimately, they have a bad experience because of it. They don't have a bad experience because you screwed up. They have a bad experience because how you respond to that screw up. Okay? So words matter.
So is what you're saying sorry, not sorry?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And that's one of the things that, you know, you want to essentially avoid doing in support. And like Chris talks about all the time with sales, and we'll talk about later on with scripting, is that words really matter. And support needs to think more like sales, because they actually will have as much of an impact if they do their job right. Last thing for you, last piece of technology that we're exploring, because I'm fanatical about support. I see Carrie in the chat here, a lot of our clients who are part of this, Anthony. For the most part, right, and I'm not without fail, I respond to emails, you know, within a few minutes, within an hour, with incredible volume, right? I'm just fanatical about that. As a team has grown, and I think many of you can relate to this as you're growing your team, you want to instill that same type of urgency into your team. The reality is that you just don't know, right? And it can leave a pit in your stomach knowing that, hey, Anthony just emailed John, but John took 2 days to respond. That's not how we run our business at Curaytor. So a tool that we're using that I want you guys to explore, because I think it'd be useful for your business, is Groove HQ. Okay? You can set up a centralized support email, a centralized inbox where you can manage all your client communication. But from a manager perspective, as your business is growing, you now will have visibility to the time it takes for your people to respond, broken down by individual. So I can look at John and say, hey, Johnny, it's taking you 4 hours. Either one or two things happening. Johnny's lazy, which he's not, or Johnny's overwhelmed, right? And you can make decisions from the top level to help your team out and set them up for success. So Groove HQ, so far, Chris, we're loving it. I want everyone who's on right now to explore it, because I think it makes a big difference.
And what I love about it is you don't have to change the behavior of the people that you're already working with. They're going to email you problems.
Yeah.
That's fair to say. And when they do that, you don't have to say, oh, can you submit this through our help desk instead? You can actually, just like Evernote, just like Dropbox, some of those cool technologies, when it is a support ticket that you want to count down to start on, you just forward it. Support at groovehq.com or whatever it may be.
You bring up a really important point here, Chris. There's nothing more annoying for you to send a support email to somebody and it comes back with, thank you, we got your support ticket. We'll respond back in, you know, these business hours. That's like you just talking to a robot.
Yeah.
The nice little thing that Groove does is that it acts and operates on the user side, like Chris has described, as email. So they don't even know you're using Groove, except you obviously now.
Exactly. And a lot of agents on the call, if you guys remember something called Equator, which was from Bank of America, it was sort of this system that would keep short sales or foreclosures getting through the pipeline without fail. And I remember talking to a lot of admins and people that would use that system, and they basically said that it was really simple, Jimmy. It was like green, yellow, and red. And if it was red, it meant you're messing up and you're not going to get this deal done. And they said that those green, yellow, and red lights would keep them up at night. And so I think what Groove does is it gives you a way to quantify support, quantify response time to support tickets. You know, I'm going to go around the country and talk about how important it is to call leads quickly, to use the right words. So, yeah, I think the least we can do is call the people that already hired us quickly and use the right words with them.
We had a client. Yeah, we had a client, and we're going to get into marketing. Chris has a ton of awesome tips here on marketing. We're going to bring Gary on. But we had a client who emailed me not too long ago, and he said, you know, hey, Jimmy, you and Chris preach, you know, calling leads back every 5 minutes, but it took you, you know, a few hours to respond to my email. What's up with that? And it really got me thinking that, we need better systems in place to help to be able to respond to our clients. That's a big initiative for us.
Yeah. You need a CRM for service. And that's what Groove is. So I think that is critical because you can't track it. And you're right. Every company in the world's obsessed about response time to leads, and they're not obsessed about response time to problems.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, this is us being real with you guys because we respect you and we love our community. It's like no one talks about this when you're growing your business. Growth is really messy, right? Like everyone's fired up to run a marketing campaign to close a deal. It's messy.
And the reality is, so if you don't nail the product and the experience and the service, you can't massively grow. If you don't support what you sell people in a beautiful, seamless, frictionless, obsessive way, you can't massively grow. We're also going to get into marketing, selling, and kind of creating that team environment for growth. We're going to bring on Gary Gold in a second, who just listed the Playboy Mansion. He's at Sold by Gold. If you're on Blab right now, hit him up at Sold by Gold. Welcome to the water cooler. Gary's going to be on in a few minutes, but I'm loving the chat on Blab. I wanted to give one other quick tip because it's the first audience. Jimmy, this thing's on fire, right? I mean, it doesn't stop moving. I don't know if Blab was even built for this. I'm over here trying to hit like on what somebody said, and it moves because the stream is fast. So I really enjoy Blab. If you guys are enjoying the Blab, click on my screen. And Jimmy, we're going to have fun with that. Who gets the most class by the end of the show? But
did you solicit for class?
Yeah, I did it twice so far. But I started off 1,000 in the hole because my microphone didn't work. But a couple of people asking, are you recording this? Yes. We put this on our YouTube channel. We put this on iTunes. We put this everywhere. And just a quick commercial for who we are and what we do before we get to Gary and the marketing. Gary, just kind of start to get ready. Get your earbuds in. We'll bring you on in a couple minutes here. But Curator basically is a simple and effective sales and marketing system. And so things like websites, Facebook ads, landing pages, CRM, email marketing, SMS, basically the tool set of the modern era. We build for you, set up for you, integrate for you, launch for you, optimize for you, maintain for you, and coach you on it. And we are growing like crazy. We're sold out in a lot of markets like Atlanta, Tampa. Some of our great clients are watching right now. But we are actually, and we're going to cover this, the tactic I'm about to use is a tactic we'll cover in selling. And it's a tactic that 98% of you listening right now are not using, which is group selling versus one-to-one selling. And so if you would like to learn more, I put it in the chat there. If you would like to learn more and attend a group sales webinar about Curator, our product, our platform, and how it can help you grow faster, you just need to send an email to Sarah at Curator.com, Sarah at Curator.com. Let her know that you are watching the water cooler and that you want to learn more about our system and you want to know if it's available in your zip code. But that's all I got, Jimmy. If people want to support us, the show's free. The book's coming out. I'm not going to pitch the book tonight. We'll talk about that in the future. But we don't have ads. We don't have commercials. I don't think Blab even lets them, but we don't have a sponsor. We are a PBS kind of a show, self-supported. So if you'd like to learn more about becoming a Curator client, not inexpensive. We sort of, because we do it for you, we have to charge a premium and it's exclusive by market. But email Sarah at Curator.com. One of our best sales guys, Neil, is going to be doing a group webinar next week. So we'd love to get a bunch of our fans from this show to become customers. In fact, last thing, Jimmy, 33% of our clients started as people that watched our show and just sort of learned from us, got to know us, got to kind of understand our ideologies about the world of sales and marketing, and then signed up. So if you're a viewer, we'd love you to become a customer. That's all I got. Let's get into marketing.
Okay, awesome. So let's build on this idea. And I love seeing Elena and Anthony and Carrie on the chat here, and Maureen. So,
I forgot to give the pro tip, Jimmy, real quick on Blab. Blab pro tip. We did the slash.
Are you still giving? By the way, By the way, when you solicited for applauses, it backfired because everyone started giving me sympathy applauses.
Okay, I like that. Okay, I'm gonna learn. I'll learn the tricks. I may have a sick child.
Don't bring
I may have my son is not feeling good, Jimmy. But no, we'll learn the Blab ecosystem pretty quickly. But no, I just saw some people doing it wrong. It looks like people are actually getting it in. Claps is called props. So props, give us props. So we got to learn that. And I taught earlier, you put / and then it gives you some options. But it's also kind of like Twitter, where if you put at, so if you put at Kerry Qualters, at Amir, it'll tag them. You can bring them into a thread. And then also you can like people's comments. So like Amir and a bunch of people in the thread that are providing a lot of value. Lisa Archer's in the thread right now. So the people in the thread that are sharing the links we're mentioning, like you should like their little comment. I'm guessing there's a way to connect with them on Blab. But anyway, so far so good, Jimmy. We stumbled out of the gates, but we're halfway done with the show. We've got Gary coming on in a few minutes. We'll probably mess that up just so everybody understands. But we're about to get into marketing, sales, and then culture. We'll call it for the last section.
Sure. Let's build on this thing, because I'll set you up for this. Okay. So right now, again, going back to the beginning, you're focusing on improving the product and service in which you actually sell to people. Then you focus on how can you make that a great experience by meeting their expectations through systems, through software. Okay. You've got this great package. You've got this great service you're ready to basically go to the market with. Now, right, you have to get the word out. So the way we define marketing, we sort of putting it under the umbrella of both the messaging and the medium. What you say to explain your product and service and how you reach people. So let's start, Chris, with the first, which is messaging. And let's just talk a little bit about that in terms of some of the pro tips you have around messaging and what we need to be thinking about.
Sure. Well, it builds on itself, right? So you've nailed the product. You understand that you're going to actually provide amazing service for the people that you're working with. And then the messaging is actually really tough. I mean, messaging for us has been a challenge. You heard me just try to do it. Simple sales and marketing solution. But when we look at our messaging, I do want people to understand how much time and thought and energy we spend on that. So when we say that we're a simple and effective sales and marketing system, just to break that down so people understand what we talk about with messaging, in the world we're in, most systems are complicated, so we want to be simple. In our world, most people don't get an ROI, and we do, so that's effective, right? Most people invest in marketing or sales solutions, right? And then a lot of people don't build a system. They sign up for software. So I think that every company needs an elevator pitch. Every company needs to be able to define who they are, what they do, what they're working on, what they sell in a simple sentence. And that's why it gets really tricky. And so you may change the messaging. Ours has been marketing that works. We do it for you. Grow faster. But one thing is we spend a lot of time thinking about our messaging. And I don't think a lot of people do. I think that most people listening right now, if we said, what's your elevator pitch? They would say, I'm a real estate agent in Tampa. Exactly. So obsessing about the message is marketing, first of all. And if you're going to market, your marketing gets better when your message is meticulous. Somebody should tweet that. Your marketing gets better when your messaging is meticulous. And that really, Jimmy, is what we want to focus on for marketing for growing faster, because all the marketing, whether it's Facebook ads, email marketing, website, Twitter, whatever it may be, there has to be a consistent message and drum that you're beating over time. Yeah. And all of our favorite brands do that. Basecamp is a simple project management tool. Slack will help you eliminate email. Dropbox makes storing and sharing files simple. DocuSign makes getting a contract and a signature digital. Like most people's messaging is so easy. But anyway, I want people to think about that for sure.
There's one thing I wanted to add, Chris, because this is something you brought up before. I think it was a really interesting exercise. which is go back and look at your testimonials and your reviews, right? You have on the web, and look at the words your customers use to describe you, because that messaging exists within the words they use, right? Whether it's responsive, whether it's, they felt.
Well, that's what we did. We went to curator.com/testimonials. If you're a real estate agent right now, go to your Zillow reviews page.
Yeah.
And what are the common themes in the reviews? And ours was all-in-one system, simple, it works, and I'm growing. And so that was sort of where we got the mortar for the bricks of our messaging. Great point.
Excellent point. Okay, cool. So anytime I think about marketing, Chris, I always come to you with like new stuff to do, right? And which you've sort of rejected a lot of the ideas because your mind always goes towards building on the things that already work. So just talk about this concept because you're a big advocate of it, of like doubling down on your winners.
I think that's something people overlook when they're looking to grow is they always look for new. They don't look for what I would consider nuanced, right? It's not always about new. Sometimes it's in the nuances of what you already do. So I would guess as an example of that, what is your largest bucket of leads today? So for real estate agents, just click on my screen if this is true. Do you get most of your leads in business from referrals and past clients? I'm interested to know. And you like that, Jimmy? Look at that thing, dude. You see how it's going up? So the idea there is if right now your referral base is your biggest chunk of income, most people don't go into the year strategically thinking about how they're going to better market and better wring that orange dry. A lot of people get referrals passively, not purposefully. So as an example, when we looked at our data at Curator, we saw that we had, even though we're an internet marketing company that gets thousands of leads online, 1/3 of our leads are from referrals from current customers, which makes us feel great, especially again, because we don't have just that as a source. And so when I think about here's a great example, we've already got people sending us people as a way that we grow. So what if we financially incentivized people to send us people? One example, right? Now I know real estate agents, you can't pay this and that, but the idea that you want to refer a friend, you want referrals, but you don't do any referral marketing that's creative, that's thoughtful. Now the extreme example is DirecTV. Refer a friend and save $500. They save, you save. But what is the example of that you could add? So if you just ask yourself this very simple question, what is my number one source of income? And how can I think a little bit more critically about increasing that? So when you look at our goals for growth this year, if our goal is, as an example, to have 500 new customers, yes, we have some new initiatives that'll help us hit that goal. But our primary goal is to increase what we already did to get better at that. So anyway, go back to your ads that did the best from last year. Run more like that. Go back to your blog post that got the most views. Write more like that. Go back to, as an example, those of you right now that do a client appreciation party. Do it twice a year, not once. Do it quarterly, not annually. So I think that's probably a big best practice is just doubling down, tripling down on what worked best. Don't just go, okay, well, we're going to get agents to sign up for what we do no matter what.
Yeah.
So what else should we do? No. How can we get more agents? And if referrals are a lead source, do more referrals. Facebook ads kill it. Run more of those. Increase the budget. That kind of stuff. So anyway, I think that's a really big point to make, which is just,
Well, I think what we're really saying here, guys, is we're saying essentially there's probably 1 to 2 or 3 things that you can focus on in your business to help you grow. And when you're a fast growing organization, you tend to look outside to say, what can I be doing differently to accelerate my growth? When in fact, actually, if you come around and say, what are the things that I am already currently doing that I can double down on that to accelerate that? It's excellent advice, and it's a principle that we really subscribe to. All right, so Chris, let's bring on our man Gary Gold. We're at the 55-minute mark or 50-minute mark from the show started.
Yeah.
And I want to cue this up for Gary.
Sure. And I'm going to bring him on now. Boom. He's going to come in. We're hoping this is going to be semi-seamless. One of the strategies for marketing and for growth at our company, and I don't see Gary. There we go. It looks like boom. What's up, Gary?
Good. Can you hear me? Is it all good?
Yeah. Grab some earbuds if you got them. Oh, cool. You got them. Wow. You're not in the
They blend into the striped shirt.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, welcome, Gary. Welcome to the show. I'm going to give you a big intro here.
Thank you. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, you sound good. That was very seamless.
My new Yeti.
Yeah, the Yeti sounds good. Can you show everybody the Yeti mic you're using? It's beautiful.
Let me see it, can I?
Oh, you got the black one. I love that.
It's extra $15.
What the hell? Look behind me, Gary. I got the silver one on my desk. I retired it when I bought this, the heel mic, but that didn't work tonight, so I'm sorry about it.
I need something to aspire to.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the show. So Gary just listed the Playboy Mansion. He listed it for $200 million. He's going to give you kind of the details around that, but it's actually in line with the show, Gary, because when we talk about marketing, one of the marketing strategies that I have used on a couple different ventures to experience massive growth is based on a book that everybody should definitely read called Blue Ocean Strategy. And a blue ocean strategy is something that if you can do this, your competitors can't compete because they're all swimming in a red ocean of price and mediocrity and sameness. And you actually do something so over the top that it separates you from your competition completely. So as an example, obviously listing the Playboy Mansion would be a blue ocean strategy. For me, it's been things like writing people work. Writing a best-selling book is kind of example of how can we do something that puts our status up so high that people have to put us on stage, that our audience demands that we get up there. And that for us has been books. So People Work was a blue ocean strategy. So is the conversion code for a number of reasons. So talk to us a little bit about how you think about catching a deal like this. We had a great call where you told me other great stories, but just, I guess, talk a little bit about how do you make a big idea a reality? How the hell did you list the Playboy Mansion, my friend?
Well, this was just about seizing opportunity. I would fall this under the category that I came up with some blue ocean strategy that's going to blow me out of the water. There's only one Playboy Mansion. I did seize the opportunity, but I actually think what you do with opportunities is way more important than the opportunities themselves. I personally have run the gamut from having very big opportunities and doing nothing with them, and very small ones and just crushing it. So, this one, I have the benefit of both worlds. It's this huge opportunity, and I'm definitely planning on, and as we speak, I am capitalizing on that opportunity. But there was no way I could have planned this other than being prepared and being in the business 38 years and being very available and aggressive about getting it.
But and so your advice, and I'm actually interested to know in the Blab chat, at your local level, in your market, have you worked with a celebrity? Have you listed a home of a local? Because I do think that there's a lot of people that have listed the mayor's house, the governor's house, the guy who used to play hockey here. They may have a relationship with the local baseball team. So I'm interested to know, Gary, like when you get that fish on the line, like you did with the Playboy Mansion, you also told me a great story about Paula Abdul.
Right.
Like, how do you take advantage of the big get?
Well, my office is in Beverly Hills, and the price range I've worked with so many celebrities, I really don't even think of them as celebrities. I just think of them as deals. But most of the time, it's very discreet. Last thing I want to do is take advantage of their celebrity. I just want to find them a home, and they want to just find a home. They don't necessarily want to be on display, but there are a few opportunities. You want me to talk about the one with Paula Abdul?
Yeah, I think. Well, that's where I think is when you have a big idea and it works. How do you get the most out of it? Like even a smaller idea than that would be. We have a client, Jimmy. We did an article about Stephanie Lanier, where she has basically, Gary, networked her way and earned her way into really creating a new map and a new name for an area in her market. Right.
That's big.
And that took a lot of work, and that took a lot of networking and years of experience like you. But I think what you're getting at is that what you do with the magic moments in your career matter. So, with Paula Abdul, you said you're an agent from the Valley.
Right.
You took a chance and came to LA, and then talk about that. That was really good stuff.
When I turned 30, I said, if I'm going to stay in real estate, I'd already been in it 12 years. I said, I might as well just do it as large as possible. And I moved to Beverly Hills, and I didn't know one canyon from the next. I just didn't know what was going on. And I went out to dinner one night, and I ran into a client who was a personal manager in the music business. And he had this artist with him. He goes, can you help us find an apartment to lease? It was like $2,000 a month. This was in '89. This was not a big deal at all. It was something I wouldn't have normally done. But I said, sure. The artist was Paula Abdul, but she just had a song out on the radio. She was nothing. By the time she became available to see houses, she just wanted to buy one. Bought something for about under $1 million. And by the time she moved in, she was one of the biggest stars in the world. I happened to have sold her another celebrity's house in the Valley, Connie Selica. Both these two people wanted a new house around $3 million. In '89, that's equivalent to about $8 or $9 million today. And there was a lot of construction going on, and there was all this new construction. And I went and I took both of them to about 30 or 40 brand new under construction homes that weren't on the market. I went, introduced myself, figured out who owned it, and there was always some developer building one or two houses. And for me, bringing these two famous, good-looking women around and showing them homes, and they were legitimate buyers. It wasn't BS. It was the real deal. And ended up selling a couple of them. In addition to that, I got like 30 big listings. It completely made my career on the West Side. That is taking a little idea, being creative. I'm a creative person, and completely leveraging it.
Well, Gary, I have a follow-up question to that, because I think for anybody who's in a growing business, and this whole show is really about growth, I think you are constantly battling sort of where you put your attention, where you put your focus. So every day there's opportunities that present themselves. There's things that we could be working on. There's things that we can be focusing on. And sometimes it can be difficult to sort of align yourself with that. So how has your the way you handle opportunities and how you sort of take advantage of it change over the years, having working with Paula Abdul and now listing the Playboy Mansion? Like, what goes on in your head in that sense?
And also, just real quick, because the audience is asking on the left there, and it's really the same question: is do your processes, do your systems change when it's a celebrity, or now that you're a celebrity, Gary, you like to downplay that, but like you've been on television. You've been on television. Zillow put you on the pedestal as their guy. You just sent me a link to you on CNN talking about listing the Playboy Mansion, which, by the way, the buyer doesn't get until Hef dies. Like, by the way, not that you made that call, but like that's sort of like a marketer's paradise. Like, it's a great story if the mansion is listed. Hef not moving out is where I think the virality came from. But to Jimmy's point and to Chris W.'s point, do you change the way you work with a client? Now, I understand what you just said. The answer is yes. If it's Paula Abdul, show her all the builders, bring her to all the best parties. But
I would have probably done that with anybody. I actually was a great idea for multiple reasons. They were products not on the market. No one else was showing them. and I got a lot of business. So it would have been good no matter who. It made it even better because all these, guys.
So was it sort of like, hey, Paula, normally you can't even get in and see these places, right? But because it's you and because I know the guy, we're going to get to go walk through the property while it's still being built. Did you play it up to her too? Or did you just play it up to the builders, basically?
No, she just wanted to see houses. So I didn't need to get into any details with her. Both of them just wanted to see property, and I was doing a good job for them. But the question, do I treat, all my clients are, pretty, they demand a lot. I have fairly demanding clients. Whether they're famous or not really doesn't play much of a role one way or another. There are certain situations that require, more care. This would be one of them. But listening to you guys earlier on the systems you need for your typical clients, this is for like high volume people. This year I'll sell 20, 30 properties, and that's what I do. So it requires a few different sets of, I don't have to be quite as high volume in terms of my customer service and having some of the systems you have. And I am available. I have certain clients. If they email me, I'm going to hook them up. I'm going to call them. I'm going to get back to them. It's important, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And I would actually argue, Jimmy, that being the agent that works with a sort of clientele that has status, if that's a purposeful goal, like if I'm Lisa and I'm in Charlotte and I want to list Cam Newton's house, I want to be the official agent for half the Charlotte Hornets, like whatever that kind of local Playboy mansion is for you. I actually think it's much easier for local people in smaller markets than it is for Gary in LA. You co-listed this, Gary, with a couple other guys, right?
I did.
And
yes,
you're in probably the most competitive market in the world, potentially, besides maybe New York or San Francisco.
Yes.
So, like, I asked you this on our call, and I really thought you had an insightful answer. Like, if I'm watching right now and I want to list the home of Cam Newton, I want to be standing next to the baseball player from the Tampa Bay Rays, because that's going to build my network and allow me to grow faster. How do you do that? What would your approach be? Take us back to 89. Put your thinking cap on. How would you do that in a non-celebrity market?
Well, I still do it today. One thing I do, my sphere of influence, or anyone that gets on my radar screen that I said I would love to do business with this group or those people, I find out where they live. I find out if their house has been on the market anytime in the last 5-6 years. I keep tabs on what's happening in their neighborhoods. And I love this saying. I go, I know their market. So if I ever run into them at the market, I can have a conversation, a very direct conversation about that property. I anticipate that moment that I might have with somebody, whether they're a friend, an acquaintance, or just somebody I want to know. And let me tell you something. If you ran into some basketball player and you wanted to do business with him, and you ran into him at a sporting event or the market or a restaurant, and you could go up to him and say, your house, I know you tried to sell it 3 years ago. A year ago, your next door neighbor sold their home for more than you were asking, and your home looks way better. You'll have their attention.
I love that. And you could extend that to a handwritten note campaign every time that a listing moves. The idea of a micro level celebrity status focused, just listed, just sold campaign. But I love what you said there, Gary. You better know your market, because you're going to see people at the market. Right. And I know, is it Ralph's Market? Is that what you guys call it?
We have a Ralph's.
I love Ralph's. I used to live out in LA.
Ralph's.
But yeah, I've never heard it. Yeah, I've never heard it that way. But I do think that for a lot of the people listening, if you're going to become a market expert, you want to feel like that's a verb. So by putting in the time, by learning, by researching, for you, it's just like really you're on top of it. Remember, we did Marketing to Millionaires, Jimmy. We
Yeah.
talked to Kevin Tomlinson, and it was the same idea, which is that if you don't know the market, you're not going to get to market my shit, is basically what he said. And you're saying the same thing.
Listening to you guys over the last hour, I was thinking of two of probably my best tips I could give people from my 38-year career. I'm sure there are more, but these are important. Number one, really be of value. I mean, just because you have a real estate license, that's absolutely worthless. What is the number? 1 million, or is it 2 million licensed agents? I know it's over 1 million.
Yeah,
and
it's over 1 million.
And for every lead you have in my market, 10 other people have the same lead. You better bring it, or you have no value. So I really provide a lot of value for people. And another thing I've done with my clients, and this keeps clients very happy, and I'll use this as an example. If your client calls you up and asks, what's going on with my market? What's going on with my house? Why hasn't it sold? And that kind of question, it's your fault. As far as they're concerned, they've asked you the question, and it's your fault. If you call them up and say, listen, we've had no showings and whatever it is, but you tell them in advance on a regular basis as part of your job what's going on in the market, then I wouldn't say it's their fault, but they're not going to blame you for it. Because when someone calls you up and said, what's happening with my market, you get all defensive. And I think I have these really good reports. I give my people really detailed reports on what's going on with their property. It helps me, it helps them, and it keeps people happy. I think the biggest mistake agents make, at least on my level, at my market, is they don't let their clients know what's going on for multiple reasons. But people want to know where the property is being marketed. They want to know about the showings. And you know what? If you do it every 2 weeks and they see the volume of what you're doing, it's impressive. If they just get it piecemeal, it doesn't seem that impressive, and it's not a good example of what's happening.
And let me just point one thing out.
Go ahead.
Well, let me just point one thing out here, Gary, because Gary, you made a point about you're doing a lower volume, right? So you are constantly available, and I think that goes back to the very first thing that we said, which is defining sort of where you add value in the consumer's life. So during your pitch, when you're sitting down with someone, I'm sure you basically say, here's my personal cell phone number. You can call me 24/7, right? Because that's something that they think is very important and they see a lot of value in, and they want to be able to invest in. On the same token, like the same thing, we go back to this idea of, Chris mentioned at the beginning, magic moments. Really defining how you're going to add value to that person's transaction. That might change a little bit over time, but there's still fundamentals that exist that Gary just touched on, which is communicating in such a way that puts you in control. We heard Jack Cotton talk about this. We heard other agents who we had on the show talk about this. The moment that you lose control, you lose trust, you lose confidence, and you lose the business, right? So what Gary's doing is Gary knows his shit, and he's proactively reaching out. No update email, but he actually has some context there, right? To provide value. And that's the product, right? So when we talk about improving the product, are you really obsessing over those aspects of it? Because that's going to really come full circle once you actually market and sell and get the customer.
Yeah. I want to ask you guys a question, because you work with so many people. I have found as I said, I've been doing this since 77. I've never seen my personal competition get so good so quick. I'm not the only guy sitting around at 11 o'clock at night figuring how I can really excel. All my other good competition's doing the same thing. And if I don't constantly evolve, I'd say if I had the same pitch that I did a year ago, I'm a loser. I mean, everyone's getting better. There's so many tools out there for real estate agents.
I agree. I think the things that differentiated you a year ago and 2 years ago will not. I know the Apple mindset that 40 to 60% of their revenue comes from products that were created within the last year. It really is that kind of innovative, keeping your axe sharp mindset. Gary, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to let you go and get into the selling.
By the way, I've trumped both of you. Yeah. I've trumped both of you.
You have a super fan. There is someone with an egg, Jimmy. Look at this. They are in love.
Is that the Gary contract, that person?
No, that person. Is that your PR firm,
no.
Gary? Look at that thing.
This is dangerous. This is like intravenous affirmations.
Yeah, well, I wanted
Yeah.
to make one point, Chris, to what Gary just said, because it's a really
Sure.
interesting question, which is
Yeah.
competition's fierce. Whatever product, whatever service, it's fierce. It's getting fiercer, right? There's more people entering the market. In the software space, Gary, they have this idea of 10% or 10x, right? And you can be 10% better than your competition at, say, everything, but you can be 10x better than them at certain things. So as an example, everyone refers to Slack as a the chat tool, right? There are plenty of chat tools out there that do a million different things, and they also do chat. The reason Slack is so successful is because they are 10x better at chat, and arguably 50x better at chat than any other tool out there. So I think in your case, Gary, you are probably throughout different aspects of your business and your offering, you are probably 10x or more better than other agents. And if you can align that with what people actually value, that's how you can stay competitive. It might change, but that's going to be the focus in that respect. So hopefully that makes sense.
Changes. A few years back, I was an early adopter to Zillow, and I remember going on a listing appointment in 2000, I think 10 or 11, and I am pushing how important online marketing is and how print is dying. And I probably went on a half a dozen appointments. I realized this was going over all my buyers. They didn't want to hear it. They didn't understand it. They didn't believe it. And I had to change my pitch because it just wasn't working. Now everyone wants to hear that. If you're not saying that and you're talking about print, they're going to think you're a fool.
Yeah. So, Gary, real quick, tactically, how do you find the addresses of these people? Is it one of those maps in Beverly Hills?
I actually have a side business, keys to Stars Homes. I have.
So, serious, if I'm watching this, that's the question I would have had is like, how the fuck do you get Cam Newton's address? How do you know the address of somebody like that? Is it a certain tool you use, or is it just sort of understanding the market and hearing things and being perceptive? Or how if my goal, I live in Orlando, if my goal was to track down, the head coach of the Orlando Magic's address after this show, how would I do that?
Well, almost everything I do business with, I have some connection to. And that connection might be this infatuation with wanting to do something. But I'm a master of Google. I mean, sometimes you just go on Google, find out someone's number, get a property profile. If it's there's 100 ways. We all know how to do this, I think. It's the same way to go after expireds. I am not doing that many calls where I don't feel like I have a connection with them, real or not.
Got it. But if you were to meet somebody at Starbucks or Coffee Bean, and they said, "Hey, did you hear about so-and-so's list? Just listed this one," and maybe you didn't know before that so-and-so owned it. You're just kind of constantly sharpening your axe internally, like you said, knowing your market so that you can just be on top of it at the market. Gary, thank you so much. Gary is at Sold by Gold. You guys can give him props.
On the show sometime here in the near future.
Well, I'll be honest, Gary. The number one reason we're letting you go is that you are getting way too many praise points.
I don't blame that.
We are going to bring you back on. And by the way, Jimmy, the archives, right? We did a full show with Gary, probably a full hour, Gary, that we did together in season 1. So if people go to YouTube or iTunes, they can find the episode with Gary Gold. It was a great show. You're a great speaker. Anytime I talk to you, even privately on the phone or in an environment like this, I just always think that you have a good soul and that you just love what you're doing. So those two things are huge. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for being on Blab. And we'll do it again soon. Thank you so much. Cool.
Bye.
All right, hold on, Jimmy. Yes, I'm kicking him out. Boom. All right, we're still here. Jimmy, can you still hear me?
Yeah, we're still rolling. Give it up for Gary here. He did a great job. I love those 2 tips there, Chris. But I think the point that Gary was bringing up there, this idea.
Did you see the egg switch to me? I think the egg switched over to me. No, there's Neil. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Susie. By the way, yeah, Neil's watching the show. Steve's watching the show.
I thought Neil was
Vince, my Tampa agent, Brandon. Thank you, guys. Here's the thing, Jimmy. I think that when they built this, they weren't expecting kind of a show that was already super engaging and had an awesome community to just port right in. And so I've seen some people say that in the comments, like it's almost like Mario Brothers with the coins. This is very much like Periscope with the little floating heads here. Yeah. But I'm liking it. Well, real quick, Jimmy, before we wrap up the show with some quick tips on selling and some quick tips on culture, do you like Blab? I'm interested to hear what you say right now.
Well, the thing the reason we're doing this and what I hope for to get out of this, because I always hate using new technology, especially for the show, but Chris always sort of convinces me to do it, is I love seeing the interactions amongst our community, Chris, people talking to each other independently of us. And to me, we saw a little bit of that on Twitter. We're seeing a ton of it right now in Blab. So yeah, I'm a fan. They got to get rid of these ridiculous things that are popping up every 2 seconds. They got to sort of streamline some of the stuff. But yeah, it's worth us doing again. It works, and I think people love it. So if you're watching right now in your Blab, because we have a big show and maybe some of the Blab people hopped on. I've heard this is one of the biggest ones, Jimmy. Not that we're breaking records, but this is larger than their average Blab. I would recommend to the product team at Blab. That's very tweet worthy. Larger.
Well, here's what I would recommend: that you basically curate, like if the egg guy is giving Gary eggs for an hour straight, or you're getting the eggs now because I'm talking bad about the egg guy. See how the eggs are floating on your face?
Well, Chris, I'm going to interrupt you here. We have Hannah Russell, who's part of the Blab team, who actually just jumped into the Blab conversation. So any feedback, she's actually listening. So go ahead.
Who was that, by the way?
That's at Hannah.
Cool.
Which is very cool.
Yeah, my thing would just be that if you could almost if that egg was going off 50 times, maybe you just did a bigger bubble or even a bubble that had a plus 50. You know what I'm saying, Jimmy? Just stack them. But I love it.
Aggregate the feed, right, is what you're trying to do there.
Yeah. Anyway, should we bring Hannah on? We can bring her on.
Well, let's
not do that.
Let's just
it's late. She could be drunk.
Yeah, come on. All right.
Yeah.
So,
well, anyway, Hannah, thank you for watching. Seriously, we've been on YouTube for a long time using Hangouts. We have 6 million minutes watched on YouTube. The Water Cooler has one of the best communities in the world, and so we're pumped to use Blab. So, Jimmy, I'm going to ask you again. I know she's watching now. I'll ask you a little bit more of a specific question. Will we be using Blab, or will we go back to Hangouts for the next episode of the Water Cooler?
Well, listen, we got the community watching right now, Chris. Just drop it into the chat right now, Blab or Hangouts. Let's hear the response, because honestly, for me, it's the reaction that they get. So let's hear it.
Yeah. Well,
Blab. It's probably right now 90% Blab.
Yeah, and props to the girl that works for Blab that's getting to watch this. And the other thing is, remember, this is your first time ever using it. Same for us. We'll get better and sharper. You'll get better and sharper. I do feel like, Hannah, since you're watching, when a show is popular and the comments are flowing, it does feel a little bit like, I can't tell you what any of the best comments from the fans were tonight. Maybe there would be a way to pin the most reacted to messages. I don't know. 95%, Jimmy, on Blab?
Yeah, 95%. Well, Hannah, just email us. I'll just drop Chris's email in there because he's a Blab fanatic already. Just email us and we'll give you some feedback. All right, let's keep it rolling.
Cool. All right, selling. Yeah, and by the way, for those of you that are tuning in that have never watched the show before, maybe you found us through Blab. We usually do about 90 minutes. We usually air live about every other week. You can obviously subscribe on Blab, but you can go to curator.com, subscribe to our email newsletter. You can go to iTunes and get the audio version of the show. You can go to YouTube and watch over 100 recorded shows. So it's fun to do Blab, but we've got a big archive elsewhere. Let's get into the last two things, Jimmy. Selling.
So let me build this up again. So what we're talking about today, we're talking about 5 ways to grow your business in 2016. We're talking about a growing organization, right? So number one was focusing on the product. You heard Gary talk about the things he does differently as a real estate agent to differentiate himself. Number two was supporting customers in a more effective way so they have a better experience to help with word of mouth. We're talking about marketing. We have a ton of marketing. We covered some kind of key highlights. Chris talked about doubling down on winners, blue ocean strategy, focusing on your messaging. These are all marketing tactics that can help you better describe what you do and who you do it for. Now, this is, to me, Chris, one of the more interesting things that we've uncovered at Curate in the last 12 months. To sort of paint the picture here, when we first started the company, I would handle back office and Chris would handle sales. So a sales process would look very much like this. Someone wants to work with us, they would call Chris. Someone wants a demo, they would email Chris. And then Chris would get on the sales call and he'd give a demo, and 9 out of 10 times they become a customer, right? So Chris, let's talk about how that has evolved as we've grown and what we've done differently to accelerate our growth.
Sure. And Tim Smith, thanks for tuning in. Former guest as well. Great guest, Tim Smith.
Good to see you, Tim. Yeah.
Yeah, what a phrase. Every time I go to Publix and I see the Mandego cheese, Jimmy, is that it?
The Mandego cheese.
Yeah, I always think of
that.
Tim. So thanks for tuning in. John asked real quick, what are we using to record? We're using Blab. They have a record button. Thank God we remembered to hit it. But yeah, I think that it is one of the most challenging things in the world to do for an entrepreneur is to delegate sales, right? The idea that someone besides you is going to be the megaphone and responsible for the cash register ranking. It's very scary. But one thing I would let everybody know is, yes, I may be, and this is something I heard Gary Vaynerchuk talk about recently, like, okay, let's just assume that everybody listening is a 10 out of 10 in selling their own shit. Let's say that you spend 50 or 60% of your time selling what you do. Well, if I bring on somebody that could be an 8 to my 10, but it's the only thing they do, compared to me being a jack of all trades and selling being one of the things on my plate, it actually ends up throttling you. Now, it's very difficult to recognize that moment, Jimmy. Mm-hmm. For me, the moment was I have 40 demos on my calendar this week that take 1 hour each. I was at maximum capacity personally. And that's when I knew I needed somebody else to help me. But I also made another change, because another one of the best practices beyond just bringing on great people to help sell what you've built is just really this idea that you don't have to sell one-to-one anymore. And I think that's something that people over 50 can't understand. And it's not a generational thing. It's just, if you've sold your whole life, it's very difficult to wrap your head around this idea that technology has now created a way for you to present to groups as opposed to only presenting to individuals. So when I think about how to grow your sales in a massive way, the first way is by bringing on specialists that the only thing they do is sell. I mean, that really is first and foremost. But then the second thing is understanding that whether you sell software or homes or consulting, there through webinars and not necessarily Blab, where you probably wouldn't do a sales pitch, but through GoToMeeting, where you can basically give a presentation for up to 25 people for a webinar. And what we found, Jimmy, is that about 30% of all of our sales at Curaytor come through a group sales presentation. So step one was hire people that can do the one-to-one sales presentations, and that can be their focus each and every day, and I can shift my focus to coaching them. But then step two was, how can I still be involved in a bigger way? So for all of last year, instead of doing any one-to-one sales, I would do one group sales webinar per month, and it would kill it. It would do a ton of sales. But now, even me doing that is the wrong decision. So I want people to think about two things, which is, one, are there people that might be better at selling what you do than you, so that you can actually do what you do? Mm-hmm. And then two, do you have the ability to actually, like, as a real world example, Joe Taylor Group, Sean Reddy, Judy Weiniger, Anthony Malafronte, Lucky to Live Here, Elena, you're listening, okay? Those of you that are real estate agents or any business with a sizable email list, I want to put a challenge out to you that you can do a group listing presentation by marketing a webinar to all your seller leads. You can do a group buyer virtual caravan where you show them the best 5 deals, plus give them some tips about making an offer in a group setting. So I actually think that one of the ways that I've grown faster over the last 5 years has been taking my ability to sell one-to-one and scaling that to the group environment. I wanted to really talk about that as a way to sell, not necessarily better. Now, here's the thing, Jimmy, selling from one to many is much different than selling one-to-one. Okay.
Well, let me just stop real quick there, because I think there's a couple things that are worth touching on. I want to make sure we don't skate over it. The evolution of a salesperson, because I've been on the outside sort of looking as Chris has sort of been, creating this environment on our sales team. The evolution of a salesperson is for a growing company is to actually get out of sales, right? You are only as good as your team's ability to sell, not your individual performance, right? And this is something that's very hard to do. We call it like basically letting the duck drown, right? So they can learn how to swim is the sort of the concept. And it's very hard to stop selling when you are by trade a salesperson. That's the main function of your job. And so Chris is giving examples of doing group demos, right? But what he's really talking about, even at a higher level that you probably could even think about ideas for your own business, is creating efficiencies in the sales process, right? So what Chris was able to do, he was able to sort of look at, hey, these one-to-ones, the way I'm doing them as the only individual is it has a glass ceiling. So I've got to break through that through basically bringing on a salesperson, getting them as good as I possibly can get them. Maybe they're 8 out of 10. You know what I mean?
And Joe's asking here, Joe, in the chat, how do you say? By the way, Joe, thank you, Joe the realtor, Jimmy, Joe the realtor, customer now, Joe Atwell, new customer, referred by Mark Davison. Thank you, Mark. But Joe actually gave one of the best recommendations for people work. We ended up using in our marketing, which was the book was so relevant that he highlighted 33% of it. So I appreciate that, Joe, just knowing that you did that a couple of years back. But his question was, how do you sell one home to a group, Jimmy? Right. Mm-hmm. And I think I'll give you guys very tactical advice here. Here are the buyer and seller webinars you do, right? You market to your buyer leads that you're going to do a live webinar about the 5 best deals in Atlanta right now. It's not about selling one home or even your listing. It's about bringing buyers on to show them the 7 best deals in Atlanta right now, as an example. The other one would be for a seller, it would be how to sell your home for more money in less time in 5 simple steps. So if you're going to do content marketing like a marketer, if you're going to do a group demo, you have to market it like a group demo. So this isn't going to be a just listed webinar. Mm-hmm. This isn't going to be a just sold webinar. It has to have a little bit more mainstream and broad appeal, but I'm confident it can work. It does take the right personality type. But back to the idea of how do you grow and sell better? You sharpen your axe. How many of you in the last 6 months have taken a sales coaching, have read a sales book, have role played on a call, have tried a new script, have used the script for the first time, right? So I think that the idea that the best way to really consistently grow your sales skills is just to sharpen your axe. I mean, that's definitely what I would put out there, Jimmy, but I'll give everybody Neil's one of our top sales guys, awesome guy. We used to work together at Dotloop. Now he works for us at Curator. And he wants to transition to becoming a better salesperson, a better presenter, a better speaker, a better orator. And I gave him some homework, which I'll give to people watching now. Great suggestion. There's a book called The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. And it was written by a guy named Carmine Gallo. He's also got another book called Talk Like Ted. And so what I told Neil to do, which if you're watching this and you're in sales, you should do it too, is I had Neil get the audio book to The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. And I can promise you, Jimmy, that he is on cloud 9 with what he's learning. He has taken some tactical advice from that book that he's already starting to apply to demos. And so I think there is something to, and this is a big argument I make in my book that comes out soon, is that sales deserves as much time and thought and focus as marketing. That if you're going to spend all your time thinking about page views and fans and likes and tweets and leads, you better spend as much or more time thinking about the science of selling. Because you know this, Jimmy, we can take all the existing leads and all the existing customers, give them a better script, tell them how to read it better, and it works immediately, right? So the way that you get better at selling immediately is that you blueprint the game plan, you bring on great people, you continue to sharpen your axe. And I've got a couple other ways here around tracking. I mean, I think one of the things.
Let me just stop you real quick there, because I think there's something you touched on there that's important to repeat. This is something I think is very hard for entrepreneurs to do. And you had this idea you shared with me, which is something that we're introducing in our sales process, which is recording a sales call, right? I think if many of us sort of like we get on the phone with someone, and maybe the call goes well, or maybe it doesn't go well. And, typically if it doesn't go well, we say it's a shitty lead. If it goes really well, we're it because we're a great salesperson. If you record your sales call, your sales presentation, right, and you actually go back and critically listen back at what you're talking about, chances are you blew it in a couple different places. Chances are you talked too much. You didn't ask any good questions. You missed opportunities to basically turn the corner and build trust that person. It's very hard to sort of be our own critic when we just sort of think back after a conversation without having that real evidence there. And it happens a lot for us, Chris, because we have a chance to speak publicly. And for me, maybe not so much for you because you speak more publicly than I do. For me, the moment I watch myself do a presentation, I have 10 things I'm going to do differently. I might have felt great getting off stage, but then I'm instantly thinking, oh wow, I said right 1,000 times in that last presentation, right?
Yeah. So let me give people a couple ideas off the back of that. One is that even if you do a one-to-one presentation on the phone, use GoToMeeting to record it so that you can watch it back and cringe and get better. There's another one, Jimmy. I've got it on my phone. It's called Tape a Call Pro. And this is actually a simple one that for your iPhone, you can literally record your calls. Of course, you would probably tell the person you're doing that, hey, just so you know, for training purposes, this call is going to be recorded. But I wanted to talk to you about your information I got from Zillow, and just record it and go back to it and self-analyze your own pitch. That would be something that I think that if we were to genuinely ask the audience, have you recorded yourself selling, listened to it back, and taken notes? All no's, Jimmy, unless they're lying or they're going to put a no. And when we talk about sales training and you remember it, you listen, I was about to run an ad for Jimmy on Facebook that said, hey, I just gave a huge talk. Let me know what you think. And I listened to the talk, and you did say, what was it that you kept saying, Jimmy? Right? I
said the word right. Probably, so I'm like embarrassed to admit this because when you watch it, all you're going to hear me say is right, because it's something that throughout the presentation, every time I make a point, I'd say right, yeah. And you don't think about it in the moment until someone basically mentions it, and then you're like, oh wow, I said right 1,000.
So you realize later that it's actually annoying as fuck.
Yeah,
no offense to you, I do it too. That's what a rookie presenter does. The less you present, the more you lean on those security phrases. So I want to challenge the people watching to record a sales call and record. The other thing I would do, Jimmy, is just, I don't know how to do this without it being weird, but you should record yourself at a listing presentation, even if it's just the audio part of it. Because if you start the recording and you start chatting, when it gets to the time that you're closing, people are going to forget they're being recorded. You're going to get some great takeaways. Anyway,
let me just say,
Tape a Call Pro is a great hack to do this quickly. Yep.
Well, and we're getting some legal advice here from Blake, so check your local laws first. I think if you're going to present it, Chris, as opposed to saying the call is being recorded for trading purposes, you could say, just so you know, we record every call call because that way we're going to cover a lot of information. We can share it with you afterwards. Like you can share it with them if you want, so you can kind of make it more about them than you. Yeah. But yes, to Blake's point, check your local laws and state laws before you start recording conversations. With GoToWebinars, I like if they're jumping on a public webinar, I don't think there's any problems there.
No, exactly. I think that's sort of open game for recording. But yeah, this is an iPhone app that will literally use the third line option of the iPhone to record everybody's call. It's really cool stuff. But yes, and Jimmy, it's tough. I mean, it hurts. And I'm like you, like I watched the show back. I feel like it was terrible. I watched the talks back, but that's how you get better. One of the sayings that I never forgot was that pain is weakness leaving the body. And I think about that every time I self-analyze, is that the pain I feel when I do it is just weakness leaving, so it'll never happen again. And then the last thing, Jimmy, with sales is accountability. And then you got to do rapid fire on the last one just because we're way over.
Yeah, that's fine. We're good.
But
this is our first blab, so we're just working on the edges here.
Sure.
About hours.
And the app is called Tape a Call Pro, John. He asked what was the app called. But the last thing on sales, Jimmy, and you can take it to the house with culture, is tracking. And so one of the biggest mistakes that you are making right now, I will guarantee it, is that you have a monthly goal, right? And that you don't meet to discuss your pace to goal weekly. I got this advice actually from Dave Ramsey. The number one mistake people make with their budget, Jimmy, is just sitting down to do it once a month. Too much can happen in between, right? And so with sales, as an example, if your goal is to sell 20 people in a month, your actual goal is 5 a week. And your actual goal is 1 a day. And so if you don't have a weekly meeting with your sales team where you go over their progress to goal and you also give them some inspiration, like this isn't just a sales meeting, this is a coaching and a meeting. Step 1, here's where you're at for the month. Step 2, here's some inspiration and ideas to help you continue to thrive or to get back on pace. But you have to do that weekly, Jimmy. Think of it like a football game. If you're already down by 30 going into the fourth quarter, it doesn't even matter what you do. And so you have to analyze your
all the Seattle Seahawks fans watching right now.
Yeah, my son Lucas, he loves the Seahawks because that was his little league team. But he's like, no, there was 24-31. I'm like, listen, that game was over, right? And but that's the idea, Jimmy, is that you have to look at sales like the 4 quarters of a game, and there can be some miraculous comebacks in the fourth quarter every now and then, which would be kind of like going into your last week of the month and being way behind and still hitting your goal. But the reality is that to keep your sanity and to keep yourself accountable and to keep your team accountable, 1, you have to meet weekly and talk about the numbers. 2, you have to provide inspiration. Like one quick example, we did this the other day. There's a great speech from Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday. I mean, it is inspirational. And it's about being a team and fighting for that inch and looking at the guy next to you that you're willing to die for that inch and that you're going to leave it on the field. And I mean, it's amazing. If anybody's never seen it, watch the Al Pacino Any Given Sunday speech for the few people that haven't seen it. But that type of 3 to 5 minute fire, that type of motivation, Jimmy, you saw the other day. I dropped that in Slack at 10 a.m. I said, guys, we're going to support you next month, but this month I need you to fight for that inch and watch this and then get on the phone. We had like a 4-deal day that day, Jimmy, you remember? Like 2 days ago or 1 day ago. So I think that you have to build a culture of coaching. And it has to be more often than less often. And it has to be 2 parts, which is coaching and motivation, but also it has to be accountability. and here's where you're at. The other thing you want to do is make it a group environment, Jimmy, because if I get on the phone one-to-one with Neil, I can only make him feel so shitty. If I'm on the phone with Neil and Darren and Sarah are listening, does that make sense? I mean, not that my goal on these calls is to make somebody feel shitty, but if I were to say, hey, Neil, your conversion rate last month was 26%. Darren's conversion rate was 38%. What can we do to get your conversion rate up? That question to me and Neil is not as powerful as asking that question on a group conference call where Sarah and Darren can hear me ask it too. So I'm not actually, I'm a huge fan of a lot of one-to-one calls with your sales guys, but I'm a big fan of this sort of mob mentality, which you see we're starting to really push towards. If the team, like we did this in December, last thing, if the team collectively got X amount of deals in December, the team was off for the rest of the month till next year. So another way to grow faster is to align your team's goals with your company's goals, and to not just have individual accolades and commission, to have an additional layer of a free iPad, a free vacation with a couple of days off, a $500 Amex gift card. You know, leave some room for group sales bonuses. This is a big best practice. I'm like 4 beers in, like 2 hours in. By the way, thank you guys so much that are watching. Share the link. The replay will be on Curator.com. Jimmy, you're going to take it to the house. What you're, I think, becoming the best at, I'll set you up. We talked about this when we started the company, and Jimmy's a huge New England Patriots fan. We talked about understanding your role within your organization. And Jimmy and I and Andrew, our other co-founder, as you're starting and you're sort of figuring out who you are as a brand and a company, it's very important that you know your role. I forget who that was. There was a wrestler, Jimmy. That was like his slogan. Like,
I think it's The Rock.
The Rock, know your role. And so we sort of came up with this analogy just because for us, it's actually easy because you're a big Patriots fan, which is that, you know, I sort of want to be the Robert Kraft of the company, which is high-level strategy, high-level PR, and putting the right people in the right place to do the right jobs. You are more of a Belichick, where each and every player on the team, including the manager, you meet with the owner, you meet with the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, you meet with the players. You have sort of become that Belichick at Curator, where it is actually now becoming, in my opinion, almost your full-time job of helping us grow is helping our employees grow. So talk a little bit about that, because I know that normally when people hire people or when they think about their team, their primary focus is, what is all the shit I don't want to do? And who can I get to do that for me? You have such a high level of respect and dignity and appreciation for our team. You can teach this last part better than I can, for sure. So take it.
Well, I definitely appreciate that setup, Chris. I think that the first thing with when you're leading a company in the role that which essentially will have to evolve, that person who sort of oversees everything and gets things unstuck to make sure the organization is moving towards the right direction, is that it first and foremost, like Dan Stewart says, is a privilege. And your job isn't, or their job isn't to make your life easier. It's your job is to make their life easier. And as a leader and as a manager, you have to think about how can you get your team to produce at the highest possible level, okay? At the highest possible level. And what's required in that is thinking about how can they get better at what they do, how can they get more efficient at what they do, and how can you support them? How can you make the tough calls, right? How can you do the things that maybe they don't want to do or that you can sort of support them with? And the thing about working with a team is you have to be thinking about trying to keep people aware of not only what to do, but also defining what success is and giving them the ownership to actually do it, right? One of the things that we say here at Curator is we have a company full of adults. And this is actually, if you guys actually have a chance to look at this, Netflix did a slide share, Chris. Hopefully, Chris, if you could find this for me, it'd be great to drop in the blab. They did a slide share about their company culture. Most companies sort of treat themselves as a family, right? A mother, a father, whatever's the head of the organization, and their employees are their kids, right? Netflix has a much different approach. They treat their team like a professional sports team, right? Where everyone has a job to do, everyone has a role and responsibility. And like Belichick, the mantra is do your job. And what happens is when you have a company full of adults, Chris, and you give them the appropriate training and support, and you empower them to have ownership, they will become better at what they do than you ever were at that single task. Point in case, John. John knows more about Facebook ads and the rules and stays up to date than you and I do, right? Because that is his job. He has ownership over it and he takes pride in it, right? And so there's examples of that when you can empower the team to actually do that. So for us at Curator.
Well, one of the things that you said that everybody should write down, unless they're too drunk at this point in the show, is that if you don't clearly define what success is for each individual team member, you obviously we've been friends now for a long time, Jimmy. You're constantly bombarding me with fucking Patriots references, right? But you sold me over time on this Belichick ideology of do your job. Because if you listen to most, if you were to listen to 90% of the coaches in the NFL, they would say that we live and we die as a team. That if we work together as a team, and that if we gel as a unit, and that if we are a brotherhood of soldiers, that is right, almost like the Al Pacino speech, that is how we're going to live and die. And that is so different than Belichick's message. Belichick's message is simple, and this is the message that I'm bought into now, is that a team is a group of individuals who are doing their job at the highest level possible. And when you watch the Patriots execute, they are not taking this approach that let's link arms up and let's make this play happen. Each individual person on the team, if they do their job, that is a team. And so you have to, A, clearly define what the job is, and then B, support and train and teach people how to do their job better. So it's empowerment, it's coaching, but it really is this idea that the best teams in the world are quite simply a group of individuals who are doing their jobs at the highest level next to each other. I love that. I mean, I can't believe I'm not getting more taps right now. I think it's because we're later in the show.
Well, I think the thing is for me is you just touched on this idea, but this idea of ownership, but also your job is to sort of define what success is. And I'm going to ignore any deflate gate comments here by Frank. Obviously, part of like maybe the era. I was say the card. I was talking about the Atlanta Falcons. But here's how the role has evolved. And it's actually, I got a book right next to me. It's called High. I want everyone to actually buy this on Audible, Kindle, or just a hard copy like me. High Output Management. Output Management.
Yep.
One of the best books, and this is mentioned in that podcast from Blitzscaling.
Which was what this whole show is sort of based on, which is good.
Yeah. And it talks about basically how to run a highly effective team. I think the hardest part of being a manager, because listen, I'm not an expert on being a manager, right? I don't claim to be either. But some things are really obvious once you're in this position, which is at a certain point, like Chris was talking about earlier, your tendency is to hold on to do everything. Chris's tendency is to, rather than basically delegate to Neil to make a sales call, he knows he can close that person. So he's going to pick up the phone and call him versus basically getting Neil to do it. So your tendency is to do it yourself. Your tendency is never to slow down enough to train that person to be better at what you do, and then give them ownership and then define success and let them surprise you. The most rewarding thing that Chris and I experience every day is when one of our customers emails us saying, I love Craig, I love Steve, I love Krista, right? That is 10 times more rewarding than someone saying, hey guys, I'm a huge fan of you. Because that to us means that we have a real company. It's not just Chris and Jimmy running the show. It's people that are part of the team doing their job successfully. So number one is basically.
And just a quip on that note, which is that, and I use this all the time, is that if you're not willing to let a duck drown, you're not teaching it to swim. That is tough, Jimmy. And that's like, by the way, next Thursday when we do our group webinar, and Neil does it for the first time, not me. So like I said, it's me, and then we hired, and then I went to group, and now I'm removing myself from group. But when Neil does the group webinar next Thursday, he's going to drown a little bit. And like, there are a lot of people that would quite literally unmute themselves and hop in and help them. Does that make sense? Like, let's say the first time you allowed your junior agent to do a listing appointment for you. You agreed they could do it. You brought them out to the house so you could observe them do it. And about 30% into the listing presentation, they're fucking sucking, right? How many people, Jimmy, right then as a listing agent are going to move? Well, here's what really Neil meant to say, right? Yeah. That is so natural for people to do. So I never forgot that sort of adage or whatever you call it, which is you have to be willing to let the duck drown if you want the duck to swim. And so Neil's going to drown a little bit next week, but 6 months from now, Neil will be better at me. Well, as good as me. You see what I'm saying? So you got to let him drown. Let's go rapid fire here, Jimmy. I'm going to lead you to the promised land, okay?
All right. So
on your list, I'm going through your list.
Sure.
All right. Really quickly, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. My wife is going to be really upset. So what is the difference between a generalist and a specialist if you're looking to grow your organization?
When you're looking to hire somebody, you always want to look for a generalist, because what's going to happen is if they're good at their job, their role will evolve. You'll change what you want them to do. So most people, if they need a listing coordinator, they hire a listing coordinator with experience with being a listing coordinator. When in fact, you should just hire the best possible person you can and then cross-train them on being a listing coordinator, because sure enough, they could be picking up the phone calling 6 months from now. So hire someone who is a generalist over a specialist every day of the week, because the roles will evolve in a growing organization.
Absolutely. And that's why you also have to put value on who you hire. Like if your goal for your salesperson that you're going to hire is to get them from the Philippines, they're not going to grow into being your sales manager. They're not going to grow into replacing you at listing appointments. So we're a big fan of insourcing and overpaying people versus outsourcing and not giving somebody the ability to shine. So generalists are greater than specialists. The next one, Jimmy, is there's something in we talked about this in People Work, my first book with Austin, Net Promoter Score. Normally you send this to your customers. You've got an idea that can help everybody listening right now provide a better environment for their team. Talk about the employee Net Promoter Score.
There's a great quote from Herb Kelleher from the founder of Southwest, co-founder of Southwest, when he was asked essentially what is the how do you basically lead your organization? Southwest being, for the record, one of the only, if not as of recent history, the only profitable airline, right? And he had this great quote. I'm just going to read this verbatim because I think it's worth sharing here. Chris is on the blog. Let me grab it real quick here. Okay, here we go. So he said, this is verbatim. He says, your employees come first. And if you treat your employees right, guess what? Your customers come back, and that makes the shareholders happy. Start with your employees, and the rest follows that. And this idea of an NPS score for your internal team basically says you have to flip the switch in your brain, in which at a certain point in a growing organization, your employees, your team is the customer, no longer the person who buys or sells the home. It's actually the employees, their customers. And once that flip switches in your brain, you realize the amount of leverage you have as an organization. So many people hit that plateau, Chris, because they never treat their employees like their customers. Flip that switch, and you can unleash incredible growth within your organization.
Well, so, this goes to this sort of goes to the next one, which is every person in the world wants their employees to take an owner's mindset. But then they won't treat them like an owner when it comes to pay and when it comes to equity. I think one of the ways that we're going to grow faster by supporting our employees better is we're introducing something at our company called Profit Share, which is literally that there are monthly bonuses paid based on the amount of net profit in an account. And if there's no profit, there's nothing to share. And if profit's good and margins are good and customer acquisition is up, there's more profit to share. But it was funny because we had a client at our conference, Jimmy, when we did excellence, and she stood up and she said, "Hey guys, I have a question. There's this guy, he's in my market, and he is awesome. He is crushing it. He is going to be a threat to me. He is going to be a competitor, and I'm worried that he's going to take my business. He's not yet, but I see it coming. How do I get him to work for me instead?" Give him half your company. Yeah. Give him 30% of your company. Make him a co-founder. Share profit. So I think there's something to be said for especially real estate agents, which are mostly solopreneurs.
Yeah.
Jimmy and Andrew and I are equal financial partners in our company. And let me tell you that 30% of what I own in Curator is worth exponentially more than 100% of what I could have done alone. And props to you for that, Jimmy, right? And props to Andrew for that. But I do think that if you want people to take an owner's mindset, you have to come up with a pay system that pays them like an owner. I really bought into that. Yeah.
Well, it's a very simple thing to remember when you're managing any team. In every instance, you want to align the incentive with the desired outcome, right? So if you want them to be better at what they do, sell more, market better, support better, right? If the desired outcome is that, then you have to incentivize them to achieve that. You can't coach them on it. You can't inspire. You have to they have to have a underlying incentive to basically want to do that. If they don't, they're simply not. They're going to revert back to whatever's easy.
To Alex's question, he said, why do you do that monthly over quarterly, which we talked about, Jimmy, right? Annual bonus, biannual, quarterly, monthly. The reason we do it monthly, Alex, is because our sales goals are monthly. Our paychecks and commission checks are monthly. So that's what we talk about with aligning the profit share with the structure of the company. If you're a Keller Williams agent and you're watching right now, click on me if you appreciate the profit share that they provide. And I've seen people, Jimmy, like they get a $381 check because they recruited people to Keller and they get to share in the profit of that market center when it happens due to that recruiting. So I think that, the idea of stock options, profit share, ownership, equity, if you really want to grow as fast as possible, there are going to be people you need to bring into that kind of a pay model. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. 60 seconds, Chris. We're past the 2 hour. Okay. Sure. So last three things for you. We call this is and Chris will tweet this out here, or he'll drop it into Blab.
Dude, I haven't been on Twitter the whole night. That's a little different. I'll go on Twitter as soon as the show's over.
He'll drop it in Blab here, but Brian Halligan of HubSpot wrote a great article about scaling up and the lessons they've learned over the last 9 years. And he defined a role, which I love this role. He calls it the CPPO, which is Chief Pothole Prevention Officer. I think in all of our businesses, there are things that prevent us from sort of achieving excellence, whether it's service, whether it's product, whether it's how we market or how we sell, that there isn't any particular person who's responsible for it. And when there's not a person who's responsible for it, then as a result of it, it just never gets done. And it bugs the shit out of us, right? There's things on the software side that bug the shit out of us. You have to have someone whose main job is to basically fill in those potholes, all right? For the most part, if you're a solopreneur, you're wearing that hat. But as the organization grows, there's untapped efficiencies in fixing problems as you go along. And the organization's much happier and the customers are much happier.
And also the other key word there, Jimmy, is prevention, right? This is a pothole prevention officer, right? Or is it a chief pothole fixer? Because I think that the best employees that will help you grow the fastest will be the ones that will, as they solve a problem, establish a new procedure.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Right?
That's it.
That's a huge takeaway. That's why we're hiring the people we're hiring. That's why Curator's growing faster. Thank you guys for watching. Give Jimmy some praise. Give me some praise if you guys like the show. We are going to get the recording up on YouTube, get the recording on iTunes. And really quickly, I want to judge one more time before we sort of go into the next show. Leave a comment right now. There's over 170 people watching right now. Leave a comment in the chat right now. Blab or Google Hangouts. We need your vote. I'm going to go back and count the votes. And if Blab gets the most votes, we will permanently move the show to Blab. I loved it. Hannah, thanks for tuning in from the Blab team. Jimmy, it is different. We 100% stumbled out of the gates. We'll be better the next time we do the show. But if you look at the side, you know, these are people that never use Blab either. Dave, Blab for show. Jan, awesome show. Use Blab. Maureen, connecting with Judy right now, which is really interesting. So it looks like Blab is the big winner.
Mm-hmm.
Props to you guys for being willing to try a new platform. I'm interested to watch the replay on mobile, watch the replay on our blog, see what the interface looks like. But Jimmy, thanks for helping me out at the beginning when I crashed and burned. Gary Gold, Sold by Gold, thanks for coming on. And thank you guys, the water cooler community. You know, we just spent 2 hours sharing as much knowledge and insights as we could. That's what this show's about. Go to YouTube and subscribe. Subscribe on Blab. Follow us on Blab. Go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. Thank you guys so much for your time tonight.
Have a great night.
evening. Yep.